I was doing an interesting little experiment on what an economic collapse might mean. And so I was going back in searching YouTube with the words economic collapse, and then I would put in certain years after that in that search term. So I put economic collapse 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. And it was interesting because in each one of those years, everyone, or a good majority of those videos, were all focused on the economic collapse that was imminent, that was coming right around then. But this video is really about risk. And I touched on it on my previous video. I talked a little bit about what risk is. Actually, I talked in terms of this sort of contrarian strategy of risk on, risk off. And I also had mentioned in there that, the best way to mitigate risk is to not risk anything. So in other words, if you're completely divested from the market, completely divested of anything, then you're not putting anything at risk. Of course, you're not putting anything to work either, so you're not making anything either. And I guess that is another form of risk, that you're suffering from some sort of atrophy by not doing anything, and normal forces are constantly eating away at your nut. But in this video, what I'd really like to talk about is how do you control risk in the face of some economic collapse, a real collapse. So I guess the first thing you have to do is just take a moment to entertain the idea of what a collapse is like. And just suppose that you knew it was coming, but you didn't know exactly how it was going to manifest itself. Because it could happen in many different ways. It could be started through the markets, or through a war, or any other things that could set up a variety of different economic conditions and availability of assets and communications. And I mean, there could be any manner of things that could happen. In the event of any kind of black swan event, the defining thing of a black swan event is that you never saw it coming, and you never thought it could be this big. Of course, in hindsight, everything has perfect clarity, right? So the question would be, what would be your best option to mitigate risk? Would metals be your best choice? Cash, stocks, bonds, treasuries, or hard assets? And when I speak of hard assets, I'm thinking of things that are more visceral, things that are tangible, things that you can touch, and even some things that you can't touch, like human capital. So what would an economic collapse look like? As I said, it could be any manner of things. And so for that reason alone, we don't really understand exactly how this economic collapse would manifest itself, and what nature that it would turn on, and how it would affect us directly, specifically. It would really depend on the circumstances of that collapse. So it goes to say then that there is some significant level of uncertainty as to exactly what that would look like and how it would affect us. And could we then, in fact, say that there is some definitive strategy that we could employ right now that would virtually guarantee our physical and economic survival? So I think that's kind of a rhetorical question, because obviously not. Because we don't know what the future portends, regardless of whether it's a collapse or not. It could, like I said, come in many different ways. It's a survival situation, and so it could be at any different level. But let's suppose that it's a survival situation where the monetary system did collapse, and you don't have access to means of exchange for goods and services. Well, then, what do you do in that case? The people that are going to survive are those that can adapt to any variety of situations, and that's really the case no matter what type of calamity that you are faced with, whether it's something small in the in the minutia, something that's every day, or the ongoing struggle that we have in life. Our ability to adapt is really our strength. Our ability to have diverse knowledge and opinions and resources is our strength in order to adapt. And in the case that a monetary system fails and we need to go out and buy things that our family needs, we need to buy food, water, medicine, and supplies. Now, those people that had the forethought, those preppers, to have a lot of these things available to them, either stored at least for short-term use or even long-term use. You have non-perishables and available food and plenty of clothing, and maybe you've done some training in terms of survival aspects or finding food in other places, or you're a great gardener. This is what I'm talking about, being, having some human capital behind you as well. But the fact is that few people will have hoarded the metals. There's a very small community throughout the world that is actually hoarding these metals. What on God's earth, and I use that term very loosely, would they believe that their metals are going to be a medium for exchange for other people that need things in order to survive? Why would I need silver to buy bread or medicine or to buy a tool? I don't see the value that metals would have. They may have some value further on down the road as the economy starts building and transactions have to initiate and a new system of monetary value is created. But the reality is that the only really widespread commodity that would have any kind of real value would be human capital, because in the short term, all those things that you prepped for would be consumed and they would be gone. Maybe some things would still be around, or some things that have slightly lasting value, like tools and so forth. But really, the only commodity that's going to survive is the human capital. And so your ability, your preparedness, your ability to be adaptable and diversify and to help other people is going to be the most valuable commodity that you could possibly have. It will serve both immediate and long-term needs. It'll be the fuel that will build the economy after that collapse, after the event. I simply don't see metals having any value whatsoever. So while you're spending all this time hoarding metals with this idea or this notion of your view of what a collapse would happen, what happens if that isn't the way things transgress? So it's just like in nature. Advancing species, people that survive government takeovers, things that happen in nature, calamities, storms, whatever. The people that come out on top are those that are most adaptable. The ones that have employed the greatest diversity of intelligence strategies. The people with the most usable stuff, they are the people that are going to survive. Precious metals aren't anywhere on that list of useful things. That's the way I see it. I'd like to hear your comment. Subscribe right here. And we'll see you next video.